I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would record her boyfriend's private conversation. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would methodically dismantle someone's entire life. But then again, I never thought I'd come home early from a business trip and hear the man I loved tell his friends he'd rather die than marry me. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I erased a man from my life so completely, it was like he never existed at all. It started on a Thursday evening in September. I had been in Boston for a marketing conference, but my presentation got moved up, which meant I could catch an earlier flight home. I texted Jake, my boyfriend of 5 years, to let him know I'd be home by 7 instead of midnight. The message showed as delivered but not read. I figured he was busy, maybe at the gym or playing video games with his headphones on. I was actually excited to surprise him. We'd been together since I was 24, and lately I'd been thinking more and more about our future. Marriage, maybe kids, the whole traditional path. Jake had been a bit non-committal whenever I brought it up, but I figured he was just being cautious, waiting for the right moment. I had even started looking at engagement rings, thinking maybe I would propose to him on our upcoming 5-year anniversary. Modern women can propose too, right? The Uber dropped me off at our apartment building just after 7. It was one of those beautiful early fall evenings where the air smells crisp and full of possibility. I could see the lights on in our third-floor unit. Our apartment. Well, technically my apartment. The lease was in my name, but we'd been living together for 3 years, so it felt like ours. I climbed the stairs with my suitcase, already imagining Jake's surprised face when I walked through the door. Maybe we'd order Thai food and watch a movie. Maybe we'd actually talk about the future for once. Really talk about it without him changing the subject or making a joke to deflect. As I reached our front door, I heard voices inside. Male voices, loud and laughing. Jake was having people over. That was fine. He'd mentioned that his friends Marcus and Tyler wanted to watch the game. I almost walked right in, but something made me pause with my key in the lock. I heard my name. So when are you finally gonna pop the question to Emma? That was Marcus, Jake's best friend since college. She's been dropping hints the size of billboards, man. I froze. My hand was still on the doorknob, but I didn't turn it. Something in Marcus's tone made me want to hear Jake's answer before I announced my presence. There was a pause and then Jake laughed. Not a happy laugh. A dismissive, almost cruel laugh that I'd never heard from him before. Marry Emma? Dude, I'd rather die. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually took a step back from the door, my suitcase handle slipping from my suddenly numb fingers. She's just convenient for now, Jake continued, his voice casual, like he was discussing what to order for dinner. I mean, she pays most of the rent, doesn't complain when I go out with you guys, and she's not bad to look at. Why would I rock that boat? Tyler laughed. You're such a dick, man. Does she know you feel this way? Of course not. I just smile and nod when she talks about the future. She makes 3 times what I make, so I just let her cover stuff. Why would I give that up? My legs felt weak. I leaned against the hallway wall, trying to process what I was hearing. 5 years. 5 years of my life, and he thought I was convenient. Not loved. Not cherished. Convenient. But I didn't burst through the door. I didn't scream or cry or confront him. Instead, something cold and calculating settled over me. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Your bank account must be looking pretty good these days, Marcus said. Living rent-free, basically. Not rent-free, Jake corrected. She makes me pay my share. But yeah, I've been saving a ton. Plus, she covers groceries most of the time, all the utilities, streaming services. She bought that new couch last month. I've probably saved like 40 grand over the past 2 years alone. $40,000. While I had been struggling to save anything, thinking we were both in the same financial situation, he had been quietly building a nest egg with my money. What about that girl from the gym? Tyler asked. The yoga instructor. You still talking to her? My heart stopped. Rachel? Yeah, she's been texting. She doesn't know about Emma, obviously. I keep my options open, you know? If things don't work out here, I've got backup plans. You're playing with fire, man, Marcus said, but he was laughing. What if Emma finds out? She won't. Emma's too trusting. Too busy with her career to pay attention. She works like 60 hours a week. I could probably have a whole other girlfriend and she wouldn't notice. They all laughed at that. These men who I had cooked dinner for, who I had welcomed into my home, who I had considered friends, were laughing about how easily I could be deceived. "Doesn't your mom keep asking when you're gonna propose?" Tyler asked. "Yeah, constantly. I just tell her Emma's not ready. Buys me time. Meanwhile, Emma thinks I'm the one who needs more time. It's perfect." 5 years is a long time to string someone along, though, Marcus said. 5 years goes fast when you're living the good life, Jake replied. Besides, I'll know when it's time to move on. Until then, why not enjoy it? I stood in that hallway for another 20 minutes, recording everything. They talked about sports, work, their dating lives. Jake complained about how I always wanted to talk about feelings, how I was too emotional sometimes, how I was too focused on my career to be fun anymore. He described me like I was a roommate he tolerated, not a woman he'd been in a relationship with for half a decade. When I finally heard them wrapping up their conversation, I quietly walked back down the stairs and out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat in the parking lot, staring at my phone, at the 43-minute recording that had just destroyed my entire life. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened my banking app and started looking at our finances with new eyes. We had what Jake and I called a joint account for household expenses. Technically, it was my account that I'd given him access to. I looked at the transaction history. According to our agreement, we were supposed to split rent and utilities 50-50. The rent was $2,000 a month, so we should each pay $1,000. I scrolled through 6 months of transactions. Every month, I had been depositing $1,500. Every month, Jake had been depositing $500. He'd been shorting me $500 a month for... I scrolled back further. For 2 years. That was $12,000 right there. Then there were the groceries. I charged them to this account, and Jake was supposed to Venmo me his half. Looking at my Venmo history, he'd paid me back maybe 30% of the time. Another few $1,000s. The furniture he mentioned. I'd bought that couch for $3,000. He was supposed to pay half. He never did. The dining table, $2,000. The bedroom set, for $1,000. All on my credit card, all with promises to pay me back later. I felt sick. But I also felt something else. Clarity. I texted my best friend Maya. She was an attorney at a family law firm, and right now, I needed her professional expertise more than her emotional support. Emergency. Need your help. Don't call, he might hear. Can you meet me? She texted back immediately. My office. 20 minutes. I drove to Maya's office in a daze, that recording playing over and over in my mind. I'd rather die than marry Emma. She's just convenient. I keep my options open. Maya was waiting in the lobby when I arrived. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a conference room, locking the door behind us. What happened? She asked. I played her the recording. I watched Maya's face transform as she listened. Shock, then anger, then cold professional fury. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That fucking asshole, she finally said. Maya never cursed unless she was really angry. Emma, I am so sorry. But also, thank you for recording this. This is evidence. Evidence of what? Being an asshole isn't illegal. No, but financial exploitation might be. Tell me about your financial situation with him. I laid it all out. The rent disparity, the unpaid furniture, the groceries, the utilities. How he told me he was struggling financially, so I'd covered more and more expenses. How I'd been saving for our future while he'd apparently been saving for his escape. Maya pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. The apartment lease is in your name only? Yes. Utilities. My name. Furniture, household items? I have receipts for everything. It's all mine. Maya sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. Emma, do you know what this means? That I've been an idiot? No. It means you have all the power here. Legally, he's essentially a guest in your apartment. He has no tenant rights because he's not on the lease. You can remove him at any time with proper notice. Proper notice? 30 days typically. But in cases of financial abuse or if you feel unsafe, that can be expedited. I don't feel unsafe. I feel furious. Good. Use that. Emma, you have an opportunity here that most women in your situation don't have. You have financial independence, legal authority, documented evidence of his deception, and the element of surprise. He has no idea you know any of this. Something in Maya's tone made me look up at her. She had that expression she got when she was planning legal strategy, the one that made opposing counsel nervous. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking that if you want to, you could make Jake's comfortable little life very uncomfortable. Not illegally, not immorally, just efficiently. I'm listening. And that's how the plan began. Maya and I stayed in that conference room until 2 in the morning, laying out every detail. We decided on a 3-week timeline. 3 weeks to gather every piece of evidence I needed, to move my belongings to a new location, to document every lie and every dollar. 3 weeks for Jake to continue thinking everything was fine while I systematically prepared to erase him from my life. The goal, Maya explained, is that one day he comes home and you're just gone. No confrontation, no drama, no chance for him to manipulate you or make promises he won't keep. You just disappear from his life as completely as he planned to disappear from yours. What about all his stuff? His stuff stays. In boxes, with a detailed invoice of everything he owes you and instructions for payment. Very civil, very legal, very final. I booked a hotel room for that night. I couldn't go back to the apartment yet. Couldn't look at Jake without him seeing the truth on my face. I texted him that my flight had been delayed and I was staying near the airport. He responded with a simple okay and a sad face emoji. No, I miss you. No, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Just acknowledgement. In my hotel room, I listened to the recording again and again. Each time, I heard new details that made my stomach turn. The casual cruelty in his voice. The calculation in how he described our relationship. The complete lack of guilt or remorse. But I still didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. Over the next week, I played the perfect girlfriend. I came home from my delayed flight and kissed Jake hello. I asked about his night and he said it was boring, just him watching TV alone. I smiled and nodded. I cooked his favorite dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I acted like everything was completely normal. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. I logged into our joint account and downloaded 7 years of transaction history. I went through every receipt I'd saved, photographing them all. I found the furniture delivery confirmations, the utility bills in my name, the lease agreement he'd never signed. I created a detailed timeline of every time he'd promised to pay me back and never did. I also did something I'd never done before. I looked at his phone. Jake kept his phone locked, but I knew his passcode. He'd given it to me years ago for emergencies, back when we still trusted each other completely. Or rather, back when I trusted him and he was already deceiving me. One night, while he was in the shower, I went through his messages. Rachel from the gym was real. They'd been texting for 4 months. Flirty messages, plans to meet up for coffee, complaints about their situations. She thought he was recently single. He'd told her he'd been divorced for a year and was ready to start dating again. There were 3 other women in his messages. Different stories for each of them. One thought he was a travel consultant who was rarely in town. Another thought he was a widower. A widower. He'd killed me off in an alternate reality to sleep with someone else. I screenshotted everything and emailed it to my personal account. Then I cleared the recently deleted folder and put his phone back exactly where he'd left it. The next day, I met with Maya again. I found the other women, I told her. Women? Plural. At least 4. Maybe more. He's been running different stories with all of them. Maya's jaw clenched. Did any of them mention meeting up with him? I nodded. Rachel, the gym girl. They've been meeting for coffee, going for hikes. She thinks they're dating. Is there any evidence of physical infidelity? The texts are flirty but not explicit. But Maya, does it matter? He's been emotionally cheating, financially exploiting me, and planning his exit strategy for who knows how long. You're right. It doesn't matter. You don't need proof of physical cheating to justify leaving. But it does give us more evidence of his character, which could be useful if he tries to claim any rights to your property or causes legal trouble. Property. That's what our relationship had been reduced to. Legal claims and evidence and property rights. I want to do this right, I said. I want to disappear so completely that he can't argue, can't manipulate, can't worm his way back in. I want him to come home one day and find that I've just vanished. Then we need to be strategic about timing, Maya said. Your 5-year anniversary is in 2 weeks, right? Yes, October 15th. Is he planning anything? He mentioned something about a surprise. Probably dinner somewhere nice that I'll end up paying for. Maya smiled that dangerous smile again. Perfect. Let him plan his surprise. Meanwhile, we'll plan yours. Week 2 of the plan was about logistics. I started moving things out of the apartment slowly, carefully, taking only items Jake would never notice were missing. Extra towels from the linen closet, books from the back of the bookshelf, winter clothes from the storage unit in the basement. Every day, I took 1 or 2 boxes to a storage facility across town. I also opened new bank accounts at a completely different bank. I set up automatic transfers to move my money out of the joint account gradually. Jake never checked the balance, so he didn't notice the account slowly draining. By the end of week 2, I'd moved $15,000 to my new accounts. I met with my landlord, Mrs. Chun, a sweet woman in her 60s who lived on the first floor. I explained the situation, playing her the relevant parts of the recording. Her face hardened. Men like that think they're so clever, she said. My first husband was the same way. Used me until someone better came along. You're smart to get out now, honey. I need to ask you something, I said. Jake tried to get his name added to the lease, didn't he? Mrs. Chun looked surprised. How did you know? I didn't, but it seems like something he would do. He called me about 8 months ago, said you two were getting serious and he wanted to make it official. I told him I needed your approval first and he got very pushy about it. I didn't like his tone, so I told him no. I never mentioned it to you because I thought it might cause problems in your relationship. Thank you for that, I said sincerely, and thank you for trusting your instincts. Mrs. Chun, I'm planning to end this relationship very soon, and I need to know that I can change the locks without legal issues. Honey, this is your apartment. Your name is on the lease, you pay all the rent, and I never gave him any tenant rights. You can change those locks whenever you want. We scheduled the locksmith for the morning of October 15th. My anniversary, his surprise. I also went apartment hunting. I found a beautiful 1-bedroom across town, bigger than what I needed, with huge windows and a view of the park. It was more expensive than my current place, but I could afford it now that I wouldn't be supporting another adult. When can I move in? I asked the landlord. It's available immediately. First and last month's rent plus security deposit, and it's yours. I wrote the check that afternoon. Week 3 was the hardest because I had to maintain the facade while preparing for the end. Jake started talking about his anniversary surprise more frequently. He'd made reservations at an upscale hotel downtown, he said. Spa, fancy restaurant, the works. He seemed genuinely excited, which would have been sweet if I didn't know he was planning to charge it all to my credit card without asking. I can't wait, I told him, smiling. It sounds perfect. You deserve it, he said, kissing my forehead. 5 years with you has been amazing. I wondered if he could hear the lies in his own words, or if he'd been lying for so long that he'd started believing his own stories. 3 days before the anniversary, I started packing his belongings. I waited until he left for work, then spent the entire day boxing up everything that belonged to him. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, books, video games. I was thorough and careful, labeling each box with its contents. I stacked them all in the living room, covered with a sheet, so he wouldn't see them when he came home. I also drafted the letter that would go on top of the boxes. Maya had helped me write it, making sure every word was legally sound and emotionally clear. Dear Jake, it began. By the time you read this, I will no longer be living in this apartment. I've heard what you really think of me and our relationship, and I've decided to give you what you clearly want. Freedom from the woman you find so convenient. The letter went on to detail the financial exploitation, the lies, the other women. It included an itemized invoice of everything he owed me, calculated by Maya down to the last dollar, $34,750. You can keep all the furniture and household items, the letter continued. Consider it compensation for the 5 years you spent pretending to love me. However, I expect full repayment of the money you effectively stole through our unequal financial arrangement. My attorney will be in contact regarding a payment plan. The letter ended simply, "You told your friends you'd rather die than marry me. Thank you for being honest with them, even if you couldn't be honest with me. I hope the money you saved was worth it. I hope the backup plans work out. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But you won't find it with me. I'm done being convenient." I printed it out, signed it, and sealed it in an envelope. October 14th, the night before the anniversary. I barely slept. My new apartment was fully set up with furniture I'd bought just for myself, in colors I loved, arranged exactly how I wanted. My suitcases were packed with everything I couldn't live without. My important documents were in a safe deposit box. My new bank accounts were funded and active. Everything was ready. Jake, oblivious to it all, was excited about his surprise. He kissed me goodbye that morning and told me to pack an overnight bag for the hotel. "This is going to be a weekend you'll never forget," he said. He had no idea how right he was. The morning of October 15th started with an Oscar-worthy performance. At 6 a.m., I stumbled into the bedroom clutching my stomach. "Jake," I groaned. "I don't feel good." He woke up groggily. "What's wrong?" "I think I have food poisoning. That Thai food from last night. Oh God." I ran to the bathroom and made appropriate sick sounds. When I emerged, Jake looked disappointed but also annoyed. "Are you sure? I spent $600 on this hotel reservation." "Emma." "Not are you okay? Or what can I do to help?" His first concern was the money. The money that was, of course, coming from my credit card. "I'm so sorry," I said weakly. "You should still go. Enjoy the spa, order room service. We can celebrate when I feel better." "By myself? What's the point?" "Jake, I feel terrible about ruining your surprise. Please just go. I'll rest here, drink fluids, and we'll make it up next weekend." He argued for a few more minutes, but eventually, the pull of a luxury hotel and spa treatments won out over concern for his supposedly sick girlfriend. He packed his bag, kissed me on the forehead, and told me to call if I needed anything. "I love you," he said at the door. "I know," I replied. I didn't say it back. The moment his car pulled out of the parking lot, I sprang into action. The locksmith arrived at 8:30, exactly as scheduled. Mrs. Chun let him into the building and supervised as he changed all the locks. New deadbolt, new door handle, new keys that Jake would never have. The movers arrived at 9. I'd hired a full-service company, told them exactly what to take, every piece of furniture, every kitchen item, every decoration that belonged to me, which was everything except Jake's clothes and personal items, all already boxed and waiting. By noon, the apartment was empty except for Jake's possessions, stacked neatly in the living room, and the envelope with his name on it placed on top of the boxes. I did one final walkthrough, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. The apartment looked sad and hollow without my furniture, without the curtains I'd hung, without the plants I'd nurtured. But it also looked temporary, like a place where someone had been camping, not living. It looked exactly like what it had been for Jake. Convenient. I left the keys on the kitchen counter. My key, the one I'd used for 3 years. I didn't need it anymore. By 2 p.m., I was in my new apartment, surrounded by my belongings, finally in a space that was entirely mine. I ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine, and waited. Jake's first text came at 3. "How are you feeling, babe?" I didn't respond. At 4:30, "Want me to bring you soup or anything?" Still nothing from me. At 5, "Emma? Are you sleeping?" 6, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. He called 6 more times over the next hour. I blocked his number. He tried texting from different numbers, Probably borrowed from hotel staff or other guests. Emma, please answer. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Sure you are, I thought. Worried that your comfortable life is falling apart. At 7:30, I got a call from Maya. He's calling me, she said, demanding to know where you are. I told him you're represented by counsel, and he should only contact me through formal channels from now on. How did he sound? Panicked, angry, confused. Exactly how he should sound. At 8, according to Mrs. Chun, who texted me updates, Jake arrived at the apartment. His key didn't work. He tried it multiple times, thinking maybe he was using the wrong one. Then he started pounding on the door. Mrs. Chun called the police. When the officers arrived, Jake was yelling through the door, demanding that I let him in. The police asked to see his identification and proof of residency. He had his driver's license, but the address on it was his parents' house 3 hours away. He had no mail sent to this address, no utility bills, no lease agreement. But I live here, he insisted. My girlfriend, Emma, she's in there. Something's wrong with her. She won't answer her phone. Mrs. Chun appeared with her key. Emma asked me to let him collect his belongings, she told the officers. She's no longer in residence. What? No, that's impossible. She was here this morning. Mrs. Chun unlocked the door, and Jake pushed past her into the empty apartment. I wished I could have seen his face when he saw those boxes, that envelope, the complete absence of everything that had made this place a home. According to Mrs. Chen's texts, he stood in the middle of the empty living room for a full minute, just staring. Then he opened the envelope. She said she heard him make a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. The police gave him 30 minutes to load his belongings into his car. Took him 3 trips. Mrs. Chun supervised to make sure he didn't damage anything. He tried calling me another 20 times during those 30 minutes. All the calls went straight to voicemail because he was blocked. When he was finally done loading his car, he sat on the curb outside the building with his head in his hands. Mrs. Chun said he stayed there for over an hour, just sitting, occasionally looking up at the dark windows of what used to be our apartment. Eventually, he got in his car and drove away. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next day, Jake's texting campaign began in earnest. He borrowed phones from everyone he knew to get past my block. Emma, please, we need to talk. You can't just throw away 5 years. I can explain everything. Explain what exactly? Explain how he'd rather die than marry me? Explain how I was convenient? Explain the savings account he'd built with my money while I struggled? Explain the other women who thought he was single? I didn't respond to any of it. On day 2, he showed up at my workplace. Security stopped him in the lobby. My boss, who I'd briefed on the situation, came down personally to tell him he needed to leave or they'd call the police. Jake tried to argue, saying he just needed 5 minutes to talk to me. My boss told him I'd made it clear I wanted no contact and he needed to respect that. She's overreacting, Jake shouted in the lobby of my office building, in front of colleagues and clients. We had a fight, that's all. Emma, please. Security escorted him out. My boss offered me the rest of the day off, but I declined. I had work to do, and I wasn't going to let Jake disrupt my life any more than he already had. That evening, Maya called. Jake left me 15 voicemails and sent 32 emails. He's claiming you stole his furniture. His furniture? The furniture you bought with your money have receipts for, and he never contributed a penny toward. That furniture. What did you tell him? I told him that if he continues harassing you or making false claims, we'll pursue legal action for the $34,000 he owes you plus emotional distress damages. He got quiet after that. Day 3 was when Jake's friends started reaching out to me. First Tyler, then Marcus, then others from their friend group. Emma, Jake says you kicked him out for no reason. He's devastated. Can you guys please just talk? I didn't respond to them either, but I did create a private Google Drive folder. I uploaded the full recording of that night, time-stamped and unedited. I uploaded screenshots of his messages with Rachel and the other women. I uploaded photos of receipts showing how I'd paid for everything in our apartment. I uploaded the bank statements showing the financial imbalance. I uploaded a detailed timeline of his lies. Then I shared the folder with Marcus, Tyler, and 3 other close mutual friends. Just those 5 people. People who Jake had confided in, who had laughed along with his deception, who were now demanding that I explain myself. The message I sent with the folder was simple. Jake is telling you I overreacted and ended our relationship for no reason. Here is the truth. I'm only sharing this because he's spreading lies, and I won't let him control the narrative of my own life. Listen to the recording. Look at the evidence. Then decide who's in the wrong here. I won't be discussing this further. The responses started coming in within hours. Marcus, Emma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he felt that way. We just thought he was venting. I'm so sorry. Tyler didn't message me directly, but he posted a vague Facebook status. Sometimes you think you know someone and you're completely wrong. Lost respect for someone today. Jake's college roommate, Aaron, sent a long message apologizing for not seeing through Jake's facade and offering to be a character witness if I needed one for any legal proceedings. The friend group splintered. Some people who had heard Jake's version first and believed it without question, stayed loyal to him. But most people, once they heard that recording and saw the evidence, wanted nothing to do with him. On day 4, Rachel found out. One of my friends, Claire, happened to go to the same gym. She'd seen Jake there with Rachel, seen them being cozy, and put 2 and 2 together. Claire showed Rachel the screenshots of Jake's dating profile, the one where he claimed to be divorced, plus a photo of me and Jake from our social media that made it clear we'd been together recently. Rachel confronted Jake at the gym. According to Claire, who witnessed the whole thing, Rachel slapped him across the face and called him a pathetic liar in front of everyone in the free weights section. Then Rachel did something I hadn't expected. She posted on her Instagram, where she had about 15,000 followers from her yoga teaching. PSA about lying men. The post began. If a guy tells you he's divorced, check. If he says he lives alone, verify. Jake Williams told me he'd been divorced for a year and was ready to start dating again. Turns out he was living with his girlfriend of 5 years and using her money to take me on dates. Ladies, do your research. Men do better. Way better. The post included a tastefully cropped photo that showed just enough of Jake's face to identify him if you knew him, but not enough to be considered doxing. It had 10,000 likes within the first day. Jake's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and he had no one to blame but himself. On day 5, Jake's mother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Emma, honey, what happened? Mrs. Williams asked. She'd always been kind to me, had welcomed me into their family, had asked me to call her Linda instead of Mrs. Williams. Jake is saying you threw him out for no reason, but that doesn't sound like you. What's going on? I didn't want to play her the recording. She was his mother. But I also couldn't let her believe I was the villain in this story. Linda, Jake said some things about me and our relationship that made it clear he wasn't as invested as I was. I ended things and asked him to move out of my apartment. That's all. What kind of things? Things I'd rather not repeat. But Linda, I recorded them because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. If you want to hear it, I can play it for you. But I'm warning you, it's not pleasant. There was a long pause. Play it. I played her the relevant section. The I'd rather die than marry Emma part. The part about me being convenient. The part about keeping his options open. When it ended, Linda was crying. I didn't raise him like this, she whispered. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Linda. You've always been wonderful to me. He's at our house now, did you know that? Sleeping in his childhood bedroom, acting like the world has wronged him. His father and I have been feeling so sorry for him, thinking you broke his heart for no reason. Her voice hardened. I need to go have a conversation with my son. Later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Jake's father, Tom. Emma, this is Tom Williams. Linda told me everything. We had no idea. We're making Jake pay you back every cent, even if we have to pay it ourselves. I'm ashamed of my son. You deserved better. The next morning, Jake's father called him. The conversation apparently involved words like disgrace, embarrassment, and you will make this right. Jake's parents gave him an ultimatum. Pay Emma back and get his life together, or don't come back to their house. For the first time since this started, I felt a twinge of sympathy for Jake. But only a twinge, and only briefly. Week 2 after the erasure, Maya filed a civil suit for the $34,750, plus legal fees and court costs. Jake couldn't afford an attorney, so he represented himself, which went about as well as you'd expect. The judge was not sympathetic to his case. When Jake tried to argue that the furniture should be considered joint property because he'd lived there too, the judge pointed out that his name wasn't on a single receipt, lease agreement, or utility bill. When Jake claimed I'd entrapped him by recording that conversation, the judge explained that recording conversations in your own home is legal in our state, and that Jake had no reasonable expectation of privacy while being a guest in my apartment. When Jake tried to say that the financial arrangement was just how relationships work, and that I was being vindictive, the judge asked if he had any evidence that he'd contributed equally to the household expenses. He didn't. The judge ruled in my favor for the full amount plus court costs. Payment plan: $800 a month for 5 years. Wages to be garnished if necessary. Jake stood up and shouted that it wasn't fair, that I made more money than him so I should have paid more, that I was ruining his life out of spite. The judge looked at him coldly and said, "Mr. Williams, the only person who ruined your life is you. You exploited someone's trust and generosity for your own financial gain while actively planning to leave her. The fact that you don't understand why this is wrong tells me you haven't learned anything from this experience." Garnishment order approved. Next case. Jake's wages were garnished starting that month. Between the garnishment and the massive hit to his credit score from the judgment, he couldn't afford to rent his own apartment. He remained at his parents' house, working at the same sales job he'd had throughout our relationship, watching $800 disappear from each paycheck before he even saw it. Meanwhile, my life was transforming in ways I couldn't have imagined. Without Jake's presence, without the constant low-level stress of managing his ego and his needs and his lies, I felt like I could finally breathe. I started taking the yoga classes I'd always wanted to try but Jake had mocked. I redecorated my apartment in colors I loved but Jake had said were too feminine. I went to restaurants I'd wanted to try but Jake had dismissed as overpriced. I traveled to places he'd never wanted to visit. I got promoted at work. My boss told me I'd been on their radar for senior director for a while, but lately my work had been exceptional. She said I seemed more focused, more confident, more creative. She had no idea it was because I was no longer going home to someone who diminished me every day. The promotion came with a $35,000 raise. In 1 year, I'd make more than Jake owed me, and I'd actually get to keep it. 3 months after the erasure, I went to a work conference in Portland. At a networking happy hour, I met Daniel. He was an architect, 34, recently relocated from Seattle. We talked for 2 hours about building design and city planning and travel and our favorite books. When the conversation naturally turned to relationships, Daniel was refreshingly honest. He'd been married in his 20s, divorced amicably after they'd grown in different directions, still friendly with his ex-wife. He owned his condo, had a healthy relationship with money, and was clear about what he wanted in his next relationship. Partnership, honesty, shared goals. "What about you?" he asked. "Married? Dating? Happily single?" "Recently out of a long-term relationship," I said carefully. "Learning a lot about myself and what I won't tolerate anymore." "Won't tolerate?" That's an interesting way to phrase it. So I told him, not everything but the key points. The overheard conversation, the financial exploitation, the lies, the systematic erasure. I expected judgment or awkwardness, or for him to suddenly remember he needed to be somewhere else. Instead, Daniel nodded slowly. "That must have taken incredible strength," he said. "A lot of people would have confronted him in the moment, made it emotional and messy. You stayed strategic, protected yourself legally and financially, and removed yourself from a toxic situation. That's impressive." We exchanged numbers. Over the next few weeks, we texted regularly, then started video calls, then planned for him to visit my city. Daniel was everything Jake had pretended to be. He paid for his own meals without making it a production. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answers. He introduced me to his friends early, posted photos of us together without hesitation, talked about future plans in concrete terms. There was no mystery about his finances, his intentions, or his feelings. "I like you," he said simply on our third date. "I want to see where this goes. I'm not playing games or keeping options open. If you're interested, I'm all in. If not, I'd rather know now." The directness was startling after 5 years of Jake's ambiguity. But it was also refreshing. I knew exactly where I stood. "I'm interested," I said, "but I need to take things slowly. I need to rebuild trust in my own judgment." "That's fair," Daniel said. "I'm not going anywhere." 6 months after the erasure, I ran into Jake. It was at a mutual friend's wedding, one of those situations where we'd both been invited before the breakup and neither of us wanted to skip it. I debated not going, but ultimately decided I wasn't going to let Jake's presence dictate my choices. I brought Daniel. We'd been dating for 3 months, and while it was still relatively new, it felt solid and real in a way my relationship with Jake never had. Jake came alone. I heard through the grapevine that he tried to bring a date but couldn't find one. Apparently, Rachel's Instagram post and the subsequent gossip had made him somewhat radioactive in our social circle. The contrast between us was stark. I was wearing a dress I'd bought just for this wedding, something elegant and expensive that I'd never have purchased while supporting Jake. My hair was styled, my makeup was done, and I felt confident and beautiful. Daniel looked handsome in his suit, and together we looked like a couple who belonged together. Jake looked rumpled and tired. His suit was the same one I'd helped him pick out 3 years ago, now slightly too tight. He had dark circles under his eyes and a hunched posture that suggested he was carrying the weight of his own consequences. We didn't interact until the reception. I was at the bar getting drinks for Daniel and myself when Jake appeared next to me. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk." I turned to look at him fully for the first time in 6 months. "No, Jake, we don't. If you have questions about the payment plan, contact Maya. I've been paying you back. Doesn't that count for something? You're paying back money you stole. That's not noble, that's basic accountability. I made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes, Jake. You made choices. Every single day for 5 years you chose to use me while planning your exit. You just got caught. That's the only difference." Jake glanced over at Daniel, who was watching from our table. "I see you moved on quick." "I moved on the second I heard you tell your friends you'd rather die than marry me. I just waited 3 weeks to tell you. Do you ever think about what we had? We were good together." I stared at him. This man I'd spent 5 years loving, and felt nothing but relief that he was no longer in my life. "No, Jake, we weren't. You were comfortable. I was in love with someone who didn't exist. There's a difference. So that's it? 5 years means nothing. 5 years means I learned what I'll never tolerate again. 5 years means I know exactly what I deserve. And it's not someone who sees me as convenient." Daniel appeared at my side then, not hovering or jealous, just present and supportive. He handed me my drink and put a gentle hand on my back. Jake looked between us, deflated. "This isn't fair. You destroyed my life." "No, Jake. You destroyed your own life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. There's a difference." I walked away without looking back. Daniel and I rejoined our friends, danced, celebrated the happy couple, and had a wonderful evening. Across the room, Jake sat alone at the bar, nursing a drink and staring at his phone. Later, Daniel asked if I was okay. "I'm better than okay," I told him honestly. I used to think that losing Jake meant losing 5 years of my life. But I was wrong. Those 5 years taught me exactly what I want, what I won't tolerate, and who I want to be. Without them, I wouldn't be here with you. "No regrets about how you handled it?" Daniel asked. "Some people might say you were harsh." I thought about it, really thought about it. My boyfriend was stealing my money to fund an affair while telling his friends he'd rather die than marry me. If people think I was too harsh in exposing that, they don't understand the magnitude of his betrayal. I protected myself, I told the truth, and I made sure he faced consequences. I won't apologize for any of that. Daniel kissed my forehead. "Good. Don't ever apologize for having standards. That night, lying in bed in my apartment with my successful career and my healthy relationship and my rebuilt savings account, I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The pain of that overheard conversation, the cold fury of the planning phase, the satisfaction of the erasure, the hard work of rebuilding. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled it, if I should have given Jake a chance to explain, to apologize, to fix things. But here's what I learned. When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Jake told his friends he'd rather die than marry me. He told them I was convenient. He said those things when he thought I couldn't hear, which means that was the truth. Everything he said to my face, all the I love yous, and the talk about our future, those were the lies. I didn't erase him from my life to hurt him. I erased him to save myself. And 6 months later, looking at the life I'd built without him, I realized he'd actually done me a favor. He'd freed me to find someone who didn't just tolerate me, who didn't see me as convenient or temporary or a source of financial support. He'd freed me to find someone who celebrated me, who was proud to be with me, who saw a future with me not as something to avoid but as something to build toward. So no, I don't regret it. The only thing I regret is staying as long as I did, ignoring the signs that were probably there all along, making myself smaller to fit into his vision of a convenient relationship. The best revenge isn't public humiliation or financial ruin, though Jake certainly experienced both. The best revenge is building a life so full and happy and complete that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. The best revenge is becoming so completely yourself that you can't imagine ever settling for less again. Jake will be paying me back for the next 4.5 years. Every month, $800 will be deducted from his paycheck, a constant reminder of what he lost and what he did. But honestly, I barely think about that money anymore. It's not about the money. It never really was. It was about erasing someone who saw me as convenient and replacing him with people who saw me as essential. It was about deleting a relationship built on lies and creating a life built on truth. It was about removing someone who wanted to use me and making space for someone who wanted to love me. And as I lay there in my apartment that I chose, surrounded by furniture I picked out, next to a man who chose me deliberately and enthusiastically, I realized something important. You can't actually erase someone who was never really there in the first place. Jake was always a fiction, a character I'd created from wishful thinking and ignored red flags and misplaced trust. The real Jake, the one who'd rather die than marry me, had been there all along. I just hadn't been willing to see him until I had no choice. So I didn't erase Jake from my life. I simply stopped pretending he was someone he never was. And in doing so, I finally became who I was always meant to be. Someone who knew her worth, who refused to settle, who wouldn't be convenient for anyone ever again. That's not revenge. That's freedom. And freedom, I learned, is so much sweeter than revenge ever could be.